is applauded and praised nationally. And I really knew that it was praised here in Cleveland, but I didn't know that the whole world loves and honors Karamu.
Hello? Yes, good morning. Good morning. Do you hear all right, sir? Yes. Thank you. Sir Evelyn, today, as a result of very many years of research and experimentation, we open the telephonic channels.
Two young white social workers, Russell and Rowena Jelliff, founded the Neighborhood Association on East 38th Street in Cleveland, Ohio. It soon was known as the Playhouse Settlement, and later, Karamu House. It all started with an idea and an ideal. During their college years, Russell and Rowena developed a deep interest in public service. After studying the Constitution, they concluded many of the country's citizens were being denied opportunities, especially minorities, and in particular, Negroes and women, and they were determined to do something about it.
When they graduated from Oberlin College, they got married shortly thereafter, and then they went up to Chicago and met Jane Addams and the folks at the Hull House, who strengthened their belief that all people could work together under the guise of a settlement house. And their thought was all people should be able to survive through the use of their talents.
But not everyone agreed. Residents of the Roaring Third were comprised of a very diverse group, including Australians, Italians, Russians, Jews, blacks, and others. Many of these citizens were being denied a proper education, housing, jobs, recreational facilities, and cultural experiences. But the Jelliffs believed, with the use of the arts as a vehicle, human barriers could be bridged and interracial understanding achieved.
It took a certain type of person at that particular time for Negroes to even be willing to follow, because of the prejudice and the discrimination that was so prevalent. But because the Jelliffs were just real Americans, and this was the reason that the Playhouse Settlement was able to last.
Around the 1920s, a main activity for all the folk that came to Karamu was theater. And in 1922, was the first real production. It was a children's production of Cinderella.
Their institution was the first to do colorblind casting throughout the country, putting all races on stage. And one of their beliefs was that art was a way of healing the races. And that was way before the Civil Rights Movement. And that's something I believe in as well, but I also believe it's a way of cultivating the human spirit. Because when you get people of all races in this space, color don't exist.
Karamu was, I guess, the mother of the arts here in Cleveland and throughout the nation. That's where it started. The arts started with bringing people together. And I think that's been the common denominator, the arts.
Karamu emerged not only as a place where one could expand his creative talents, but also as a community resource where people felt they belonged. New ventures including cooking, sewing, music, clay modeling, sketching, and dance were introduced to the program.
Negroes who came from the farms in the South looking for better opportunities that the Playhouse Settlement addressed, because that's the only ones that needed their services. Having an institution that was just serving the needs of the children after they were out of school, why, that was an unheard of contribution to the community at that particular time.
But it was the evolution of the theater that helped increase a growing national and international footprint. The Dumas Dramatic Club was formed and later renamed the Gilpin Players, after the noted black actor Charles Gilpin. They introduced many manuscript plays, including 6 by legendary playwright Langston Hughes.
Langston Hughes actually taught artwork here in addition to writing many of his early plays.
I knew him because he went to high school with my older brother, and that's how I had known him, from him coming by the house and being Edward's friend. They were both students at Central High School, graduated in the same class.
Karamu actually puts on, and has put on many years, Black Nativity. Which originally he called What a Happy Day, and he renamed it to Black Nativity. We've actually put on a production of that, I believe it's been over 20 years.
With the focus now on the theater, many Karamu alums attained national prominence.
Is my freshman year in the 101 acting book, that was a picture of Ron O'Neill, who was Karamu alum, a photo of him doing a scene from Othello. And all I knew him for was Superfly.
Bill Cobbs, who was in Night at the Museum, is an alumni. In Hogan's Heroes, Ivan Dixon.
Ivan took advantage of everything that Karamu had to offer. Believe me, he would not have succeeded in directing, he would not have succeeded in acting, and anything connected with the theater or entertainment industry if it had not been for Karamu.
Nate Barnett, who was a late Karamu alum, he was the first black stage manager on Broadway. Robert Guillaume, Earl Billings, Beverly Todd, Vanessa Bell Calloway, Al Fan.
On Everybody Hates Chris, the little sister Amani Hakim grew up 2 streets away from Karamu.
Actors, dancers, writers, and painters all found a place where they could practice their crafts.
We had a lot of talented African Americans come through here and create artwork. There were 7 spectacular artists that were known as the Karamu 7. They created artwork that exists in Karamu today, as well as are part of the collection at Cleveland State University.
Karamu's influence and clout reached far beyond the arts. In 1934, founder Russell Jelliff, staff and friends, pioneered an Ohio law which led to Cleveland building the nation's first housing project. He was also instrumental in the augmentation of the Urban League of Greater Cleveland and the Cleveland Community Relations Board.
Because of the dynamic personality of the founders, Russell and Rowena Jelliff, and their ability to move amongst all the people with no fear, that carried over to the people at Karamu who felt they could do it the same way as the Jelliffs.
Then disaster struck. The buildings were destroyed by fire, but the people emerged from their ordeal stronger and more determined than ever.
It was Karamu represented the people, and the people certainly represented Karamu. They were glad to say, I'm a member of the Playhouse Settlement.
Reflecting the strength of the black influence on its development, the Playhouse Settlement was officially renamed Karamu House in 1940.
Karamu is a Swahili word that means a place of joyful gathering. So it was a natural for the folk coming from the South who may not have had family here to come to Karamu.
I was in the parking lot when the first dirt was turned over to build the first building. It was just thrilling because I knew that there was going to be something new and different placed in that area that was just laying there, gathering a lot of dirt and trash. It was decided that our street would collect money once they got the building up to build the floor for the dance theater.
Karamu's significance as a symbol of integration reached from the inner city to far suburbs to international circles. Karamu House no longer belonged to Cleveland alone.
Karamu reflects the world on stage. Karamu reflects the world in terms of the artists who have gone out and made it.
My name is J.O. Sanders, and I'm a professional actor. I'm here to tell you that 50 years ago, 1963, I fell in love with the theater at a place called Karamu House. And what I discovered there, what we discovered there, was pure magic. It was a theater that mattered, a theater that was controversial, a theater of humanity, a theater filled with artists and great human beings.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
The civil rights movement of the 1960s had a tremendous impact on Karamu.
Mr. Joliffe was very active in spearheading the March on Washington. The largest number of buses from the state of Ohio left Karamu's parking lot.
As more black activists, playwrights, visual and performing artists emerged, Karamu became a vehicle for their expression. Their art program reflected the conflicts reverberating through society, and as a result, the one constant was change.
Changes could be the influence of the neighborhood, influence of audiences. There were demands made on Karamu House to do certain things like have more classes in African American studies, have more classes in whatever that era was creating.
In the 60s and 70s, with the ascent of the Black Power movement,
Say that, I'm black and I'm proud.
many of the European American supporters of Karamu, some of whom were in administrative positions here, felt less comfortable, or were made to feel somewhat less comfortable about being here in this institution when African Americans at that time very much focused on being black, black power, and asserting independence and autonomy.
Many patrons, both black and white, could not accept what was perceived as extreme radicalism. Karamu was in a confusing and fragile state. Following the Jolliffe's retirement in 1963, over the next 25 years, there were 11 changes in executive leadership.